I've been shooting with Canon for the past 5 years. I started with the SL3 and M50, and then I moved up into the EOS R and eventually settled with a pair of Canon R8s. I built my whole workflow around Canon, from gear shelves to B-roll rigs, even how I light and color. But after spending just 2 weeks with Sony ZV-E1 and A7S III, I'm seriously thinking about making the switch. So this video is not about spec sheets or which camera has more features, because those are much more powerful cameras in certain ways, but it's about what you gain, what you lose, and what it feels like to jump ecosystems as a content creator who's 5 years deep. So starting with some context, I didn't just wake up wanting to switch. Canon has been great to me for a number of years. I was heavily inspired by Peter McKinnon whenever he first reviewed the Canon M50, and then also Think Media recommended it as a really great starting point for beginner YouTubers. So I was trying to save some money, and it was the best bang for buck that I could get at the time. And then later, when I started realizing that I'm being handicapped on a couple of the 4K features and the overall quality of a full frame sensor, I upgraded to the EOS R, and that was a huge step forward. And then when the R8 came out, I grabbed 2 for my studio, and the reason being is that I wanted uncropped 4K and then also 4K 60, that way I could slow down my footage on a 24 frame per second timeline and have nice buttery smooth B-roll. And the way that I've used them is I use one R8 as the talking head camera behind my teleprompter, and then the other is primarily for B-roll, and then I use it as a side shot for a second angle on like some of my Temu videos and stuff like that. These cameras have helped me grow tremendously through YouTube growth, gear reviews, sponsored deals, and hours of other types of content. So when I say this decision is not easy to consider switching ecosystems, I really mean it. Starting out with the good, Canon's color science is just right. For skin tones, for natural lighting, it is a true plug-and-play shooting experience, and it's really tough to beat. And if I wanted even more than that, I could also use Canon Log 3 to get more out of my color grading. However, I'm happy with the straight out of the camera look that Canon provides, and I've really gotten used to it. Also, Canon's menu system is super clean, it's responsive, and it's just logical for me, and that could be recency bias and for how long I've been using it, because when I dove into the Sony menu system, it was quite a bit different. And then I did also enjoy the dual pixel autofocus, which is predictable, it's reliable, it's especially when filming myself, I need to know that my camera is staying in focus on my face. But that autofocus is going to come back into play in just a little bit, and I'll explain what I mean, because I really underestimated Sony's autofocus system. So going back to why it's hard to switch from Canon, there's also just the investment. I've got a literal shelf of RF lenses. I've got EF glass with adapters, Canon batteries, dummy batteries, USB cables, cages, you name it. That's the inertia that I'm up against. Staying Canon is easy, it's convenient, but it doesn't always mean that it's what's right for you as a content creator. So now let's talk about what has pushed me towards Sony. And I am going to give a shout out to a good friend of mine, Christopher Cozy. Check out the link to his channel in the description below. But he was talking to me a long time about the benefits of Sony, and I started to realize that I'm growing as a content creator, and I might have started outgrowing Canon's ecosystem. What really kind of started to sell me on Sony was the ZV-E1. Now, please note that this is not a comparison between the R8 and the ZV-E1 and the A7S III. Those are much more expensive camera bodies, so I'm not comparing the raw technical output of either camera. That's not a fair comparison. So it's really about what has the longer runway for me to grow as a creator and what ecosystem is going to be best moving forward. And big shout out to Sony for sending me both cameras with lenses to take a look at. This is not a sponsored video by any means. There's definitely some drawbacks to these cameras that I'll talk about, but for the most part, I really appreciate them allowing me to try out a couple of camera bodies before spending thousands of dollars on changing ecosystems and then being completely unhappy. Right out of the gate, it's clear this thing was designed for content creators, and this is a big deal. This is not a hybrid camera system. Now the A7S III absolutely is. It's more closely related to the R8, because the R8 is really good for pictures as what Canon is known for, and it's also got really good video capabilities. But what I noticed is that I don't really do anything with pictures. I am a pure videography based content creator. I'm not a hybrid shooter, so I don't need good still photography. And the ZV-E1 is overall smaller than my R8, which is great when you're throwing it on a gimbal or throwing it into a camera bag for travel. It is a little bit heavier, I will say that, but for the most part, just the physical size of it appeals to me, because there's, like, for instance, it has no electronic viewfinder, and you'd be amazed at how much that saves when you're trying to be compact and travel with your gear. One thing I noticed immediately is that the low light performance for Sony was absolutely incredible. And why that's important is because even though I have a very controlled studio environment where I put all of the lighting that I want on a product, What I was not anticipating is how much better it made the shadows look on those products. This is where we kind of get into the difference between Canon versus Sony, because the color science is great for let's get that content out and get it out as quick as possible. But for Sony, if I want my products to look that much more crisp and show that much more detail in a low light setting, that's really important for me. I'll show you some images right now of a product spinner that I use that shows my studio in the background, and my studio is very dark. And the reason that this is important is because it is able to get better blacks as it's circling around that product because of the better ability to show low light environments. And then the other piece to Sony that I was really impressed, and honestly is probably the biggest selling point for me, is the autofocus. I was absolutely shocked at how good Sony's autofocus is. I've never had any autofocus issues from the Canon R8. Typically I can tap the screen and you kind of just hope that it sticks properly, but Sony's product showcase mode, or even just its generic autofocus, it just works crazy good. And like right now, I'm showing you some images of moving products in front of both camera types. And I'm using a 35mm 1.8 macro lens on both cameras. The wall is about 5 feet away from the camera, and I'm putting the product about 8 inches in front of the lens. And look how fast the Sony ZV-E1 focuses on the product. It's almost in focus as it's coming into frame, where Canon takes a second or two. And while it may not seem like much, it's important because the speed of the autofocus affects your focus breathing. And what focus breathing is it's whenever the focus is coming in and out as it's trying to focus on like your face or the product, and it keeps catching something behind it. You don't want that breathing effect. You want it to stay focused on what you're looking at. And when it's that fast, even if there is focus breathing, you don't even notice because it's instant almost. So far what I've liked about the Sony ecosystem has nothing to do with the power of the camera that I was testing. It's what Sony focuses on for videographers. And that's where the ZV-E1 and cameras like that start to kind of change the market a little bit, because they are focused exclusively on content creation and video work. And so from that standpoint, I started to kind of outgrow the entry-level needs that I had for Canon, and Sony is giving me more runway for what I would want to use later down the road. Now, what that also includes is lenses. Sony's E-mount ecosystem is wide open. You want budget glass, you can use Tamron, Samyang, Sigma. You want Pro G Master lenses, all there. Canon, on the other hand, has shut down third-party autofocus RF lenses almost entirely. They do have some partnership with like Sigma, but it's weird focal lengths. And when I tried to talk to the rep at NAB back in April about the different lens options and if there are any other third-party partnerships they're looking at, he wouldn't even acknowledge the question. And so I don't like being painted into a corner of extremely expensive lineups like the RF lineup. Now, with the R8, I don't have IBS, right? It cannot stabilize inside the body of the camera, so I have to use RF lenses if I want any type of stabilization, and that's limiting for me. And again, that's hardware based. I'm not going to knock it for that. But the point is there are so many more budget-friendly third-party options with an E-mount that you can get if you go to the Sony ecosystem. And then one of the big things that I did not know was going to become a problem early on in my content creating career was actually the webcam side of things. This is a real frustration that I have with Canon. Canon has what's called their EOS webcam that caps out at 720p resolution, and you have to pay $5 a month in order to get 1080p resolution. And so why would I want to subscribe to use the resolution that my camera already natively has? For Sony, it's free, full res webcam right out of the box, and it works way better with something like OBS or any other system. You can even use it as a FaceTime camera. And literally when you plug the USB-C into your Sony camera, a menu pops up saying, do you want a file transfer or do you just want to use it as a webcam? I absolutely love that. So here's where I'm at. I did not want to switch. Whenever these cameras came in, I was not looking to replace these two R8 cameras, all my lenses, and a workflow that I've been using for the last 5 years. But Sony's making cameras for creators, not photographers who shoot video, actual creators like myself. And it's people like me who want better autofocus, open lens systems, cleaner webcam feeds, and native tools that feel designed for YouTube, not retrofitted for it. So yes, the Switch is very expensive. Honestly, I'm looking at trading in 4 cameras and all my lenses to go with 1 camera and 2 lenses. It's not cheap to do what I want to do. So I'm kind of rebuilding from scratch, but I'd rather rebuild on a platform that's growing in my direction than keep patching holes in the one that's holding me back. But I do want to be honest. There is no perfect ecosystem. Sony's menus to me are kind of a mess, and again, this is because I've been using Canon for so long. I just prefer the layout and design of the Canon menu system, so that's kind of a bummer for me. And I'll also be losing Canon's color science, which I really like for default skin tones because I do a lot of talking heads, right? But at the end of the day, I'm choosing the platform that gives more control, more options, and a better experience as a video creator, not just a camera owner. So when I look at shifting ecosystems and putting the amount of effort that's going to go into making this change happen, it can't be incrementally better in a couple of areas. I'll still keep one Canon body around for now because I just love the R8. It has such a strong place in my heart for what it's given my channel that it's going to be hard to let one of the bodies go, but it's probably going to be Sony moving forward for me. So I'd love to hear in the comments below, are you a Canon person? Are you a Sony person? Canon has treated me well for a really long time, but I think it's time for me to change. I think it's time to go Sony, but I would love to hear recommendations from anyone that's watching this video. And if you're already on Sony, tell me which lenses I should grab first, because I'm building this rig from the ground up and I'm completely overwhelmed by all the lens options and companies. And finally, if you've made it this far, you're probably the exact kind of person who would dig what I'm trying to build here on this channel. So I wanted to announce that YouTube memberships are now live on the Freaky Tech Reviews channel. You'll get perks like early access, exclusive posts, and some behind the scenes chaos that does not make the cut for my weekly releases. So if you want to help support the channel and its growth and be even more ingrained in the Freaky Tech family, just tap the join button below. It's totally optional, but very much appreciated. If this has helped you at all, please hit like and subscribe and join the Freaky Tech family. I've got a lot more creator focused content coming your way this year, and that includes on how I'm going to rebuild my workflow on the Sony side. But thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm Corey with Freaky Tech Reviews. I'll see you next time. Real quick before you go, YouTube thinks that you might like this video right here, so be sure to check it out and continue exploring the Freaky Tech Reviews channel.